This week in CIST 2611, Chapter 1, we're going to understanding defense. So in this chapter, we're going to discuss the approaches to securing your networks. Specifically, we're going to learn about the concepts of defense in depth, asset management, identifying vulnerabilities and threats, and strategies for cybersecurity operations. So we're going to start by beginning how the multiple layers of security work together to protect organizational assets. Now, defense in depth, this is a security strategy that uses multiple layers of protection to safeguard an organization's assets. These layers ensure that even if one of the security measures fails, the others remain effective. To implement this strategy effectively, we must first understand the three key components: the assets, the vulnerabilities, and the threats. So, the assets are the valuable components of your network. There's anything that's of value to the organization must be protected. Vulnerabilities are the weaknesses that can be exploited, and threats are the potential dangers targeting these assets. Okay, as I said, assets are anything that an organization owns and has value. This can be your servers to data. So these assets make up the attack surface. That's the areas where the threat actors could target. So as organizations grow, so do their assets. That increases the complexity of the protection. So asset management, this involves creating an inventory of all assets and establishing policies to safeguard them. Identifying where critical information is stored and who has access to it is essential for effective defenses. So classifying assets, this allows organizations to prioritize their security measures. The most critical asset, such as your sensitive data, that should have the highest level of protections. Asset classification involves 4 different steps. Step 1 is to determine the proper asset identification category. So you want to identify the type of asset, whether it is information, software, physical assets, services. Next, you will assign ownership to ensure the accountability. So you'll identify the owner for all the information assets and the owner for all the application software. Then you define the criteria for the classifications, like confidentiality and the value, time, access rights, destruction. And then finally, the 4th step is implement a consistent labeling system for easy monitoring. So you want to do this to make sure that you have uniform protection through your assets. Now, standardizing assets, such as your hardware and software, this simplifies management and enhances security. So when those equipment fails, by having a standardized components, this ensures quick replacements and reduces downtime. Without the standardization, organizations face higher cost and more complex maintenance. And also establishing these clear standards, this ensures that your networks remain secure and functional. Now, the life cycle of an asset, it includes acquisition, development, maintenance, and retirement. Now, cybersecurity specialists must manage assets throughout these stages to ensure they remain secure and functional. For example, during the retirement phase, you want to securely dispose of the hardware and erase the sensitive data. That is something that's going to be very critical in that stage. So, looking at these steps, the procurement, that's when the organization purchased the assets. The deployment is when the asset is assembled, inspected, checked for any defects or the problems. The asset moves from inventory to in use. Utilization is the longest stage of the cycle. When in a stage, you want to make sure that the performance is continually checked. This is where your upgrades, patch fixes, compliance audits, those are all part of the utilization stage. Maintenance will help extend an asset's productive life. And then finally, disposal, that's at the end of the asset's productive life and it has to be disposed of. You want to make sure that you wipe it. Maybe you disassemble it for parts. So identifying vulnerabilities, this is a proactive step in securing your assets. You want to ask questions such as what are the system's weaknesses? Who might exploit these vulnerabilities? What are the consequences of an exploit? What assets are lost? So, for example, an e-banking system, they might face risks like internal compromises, stolen computer data, customer data, or maybe some other type of insider attack. So, you want to understand these vulnerabilities, and this helps in planning your defenses. Now, some other types of vulnerabilities, you may have, like I said, the internal system compromise, stolen customer data. All of these are potentials, vulnerabilities. An example we gave for the e-banking. Threat identification involves understanding potential dangers and implementing a defense in depth strategy. So, security begins at the network edge. That's where the edge router acts as the first line of defense. Um, the firewall, the internal routers, and additional routers are going to be uh, providing further protection. And all these layers work together to create a robust security framework. Now, when we're talking about the security onion, so this analogy describes the defense in depth. So it's like peeling away the layers on an onion. The attackers, they must penetrate multiple defenses to reach their target. However, modern networks are more like a security artichoke. The attackers then exploit specific layers. It's bypassing some of these layers entirely. So this is going to highlight the importance of securing all aspects of your network. Now, some defensive depth strategies, these include layering. So you want to make sure that use multiple layers to prevent easy access. Limiting is restrict access based on the roles. Um, this does reduce the possibility of security threats. Diversity is use a variety of security measures to prevent cascades failures. Obscurity is where you want to conceal operational details from attackers. So you don't want to identify things like your operating system, the server's running, or what type of equipment or software it uses. Also, keep in mind that complexity does not necessarily guarantee security. So you want to avoid overcomplicating systems, as this can lead to errors. Now, cybersecurity operations, these involve managing configurations and changes to ensure the security. Configuration management includes setting baselines and documenting network resources, such as your IP addresses and naming conventions. Your operating systems also must be hardened with secure settings, auditing, and access controls as well. Logs record events as they occur. This provides critical data for auditors and security analysts. Now, effective log management, this involves generating, transmitting, storing, and analyzing the logs. For example, operating system logs, they track users' authentications and system events, while application logs help identify malicious activities and also help to ensure regulatory compliance. Now, protocol analyzers are packet sniffers. They monitor network traffic by capturing and analyzing packets. They help detect network misuse, analyze problems, and identify intrusion attacks. So, for example, a protocol analyzer can reveal abnormal traffic patterns that might be indicating a possible attack happening. Now, business policies are guidelines that are developed for an organization to govern its actions. You may have several guideline policies, guiding businesses policies. Some of the ones you may see is the company policies, employee policies, and security policies. Now, security policies, they're the foundation of an organization's cybersecurity strategy. They establish the rules for behavior and system use. This ensures consistency in defining the consequences for those violations. Keep in mind, a good policy is going to align with the business goals, and it's going to provide that baseline for securing systems and the network. Now, some of the type of policies you may see is an identification authentication policy, specialized authorized persons that can have access to network resources, password policies, ensure that the passwords are changed regularly and they meet a minimal requirements for the complexity. Remote access, identify how remote users can access the network. Incident handling procedures, describe how security incidents are handled. And you may have a lot more of policies in your security policy. Now, one policy we're going to talk about is your bring your own device policy. This allows employees to use personal devices for work, and it offers benefits like increased productivity and reduced cost. Now, there are risks that are introduced by using a bring your own device. So you want to make sure that your bring your own device policy that defines supported devices, the access levels, and safeguards for a compromised device. You also want to make sure that it has the compliance with any regulations built in this policy. So examples, some of the BYOD policies may be a password protected access, where you have a policy that requires unique passwords for each device and account. It may have a policy where you have to keep the devices up to date, back up the data, enable Find My Devices on your mobile devices. So these are some of the BYOD policies that you may find in your organization. Now, regulatory and standards compliance. The regulatory compliance ensures that the organizations that they stay with the laws, adhere to the laws that govern the data protection. This may involve something like FERPA or HIPAA. Non-compliance can result in severe penalties. Your security policies must align with these regulations to protect sensitive information and demonstrate due diligence. So, in this chapter, we've looked at the fundamentals of network defense. We've looked at what the defense in depth, asset management, and the roles of policies in cybersecurity. But keep in mind, effective security requires collaboration, a continuous improvement, and also staying with the established guidelines.